There's something that happens to you when you pull the trigger and you kill and you take another human being's life. Something in you. It's like an emptiness in your life.
Inquisitive friends are asking me what's come over me. A change, there's been a change, and it's oh so plain to see.
Hello, I'm Ruth Ann Liebescher. Welcome to Damascus Roads. A small boy grows up hopping from bar to bar with his father on the back of a scooter. His childhood was filled with violence. Later, as a young man, he puts another kid in the hospital. The authorities give him a choice: go to jail or Vietnam. Meet Ral Reese.
I was born in August the 30th, 1947 in Mexico City to my father, Raul Christian Reese, and my mother, Josephine Reese Fernandez. And my father, he had a real problem, with drinking. And I can remember he had a little scooter. We went to the bars. So he would go with his friends. I would sit outside in the bar by the newsstand 2, 3, 4, 5 hours just waiting. There were things there, and I can remember things that a child should not remember at the age of 5 or 6 years old with women, you know. And that really always stayed in my mind. And I thought, well, this is not a good place to be in, you know what I'm saying? But my dad, I guess, loved me, wanted to be with me so much that he would take me. I was his firstborn. He'd take me everywhere. And then when we get home, all of a sudden here we are at home, and my mom would be upset because he's not home, you know, and he would start on her, you know, and verbally, physically abusing her. And I can remember my little grandma was there, and he would just tell her to shut up, and his own mother, you know, just really violent. And I remember just, you know, my dad just going nuts on my mom, and this was a problem that was ongoing. It wasn't just once. And so when you grow up in a home like that from 5 years old, you know, and then at the age of 10 years old, now we're in Mexico City, my father has a real drinking problem. One night we have a huge earthquake in Mexico City, and the following 3 days my mother says, you guys, we're leaving. We're leaving where? He said, we're leaving to America. And I can remember that morning my mom waking us up. My father was passed out on the bed. And my little brother, my little sister, we got up, we got dressed, and we went to the Mexican airport. And we got on this plane, and I was thinking, man, America sounds like a long, long ways, you know. Got over here, we lived up in LA on 3rd Street, and my father was in Mexico. We left him. By 1959, my mother actually got a letter from my dad, and my dad said, you know what, I'm repenting, I want to get together with you guys, I want to come back to you guys. And my mom said, well, I don't think it's possible. And I told my mom, please, please don't bring them. Don't bring them. The hate that I had in my heart was because of the way he acted towards me, towards my mother, and the violence. And when I see him fight in the nightclubs and bars, he was vicious. He was a street fighter. And so that was being, you know, instilled in my heart. You see, so all this anger that I saw, I began to become angry. So when I got to the States and my father finally worked out his green card and he came to the States in 1959, I was already fed up. I was fed up because of not only his drinking, but also his anger towards me, you know, because I wasn't a good child. I was very rebellious. He would go to work. He never, ever missed a day of work, ever. But the problem is when he would come home at night with his 6-pack or 2 6-packs and his whiskey bottle, he would begin to drink. Then, as he was drinking, you know, all of a sudden, he'd go from normal to abnormal. And he would start saying things to us and saying things to my mom. You know, and those things really hurt me. When he would call my mom a whore, you know, that would really hurt me. Because as a child, you don't know, I mean, what are you talking about? You know what I'm saying? But then I knew that my dad did things that were not right. So I was confused. And so what was amazing is that, you know, as the years moved on, we went from LA, we moved over to Baldwin Park, and there is where, you know, my anger began to grow as I began to make friends.
Well, Raul's reputation was somewhat of a fun-loving guy if he was your friend. And if he was your enemy, it was the worst enemy you've ever had. The problem with Raul was a normal person would have limitations to his anger, and he would know when to stop. With Raul, there was no limit to his anger. He was like a stick of dynamite, just ready to be lit.
On the weekends, we get drunk and we would get in fights with other schools and other people, and it was just merciless.
You know, I can't say that Raul got into a fight every day, but for most of our high school life, most of the guys that we grew up with would probably agree, the ones that we hung around with anyway, that there was a fight every weekend.
And this went on for 4 years until 1966, when all of a sudden here I am, getting kicked out of school many times for fighting all the time. I have an anger problem, and me and my dad are not getting along, and you know, I'm getting older, and I'm saying, you know what, if you touch me, I'm gonna kill you. Don't touch me. You know, I will kill you. And it's a shame to a child, because you know, you're supposed to have your dad to be your hero, you know, the one that you look up to, the one that is gonna lead you in life. And my father was an incredible person, but his downfall was the drinking. Because once, you know, later on, once he gets saved, I mean, he's a total changed person, you know, and that's, you know, I wish that could happen before, but God knows what goes on, you know. So all this rage that I'm watching now is part of my life. And so at the age of 18, I got in a fight, almost killed this person, and they came to pick us up at the high school, the police. They took me to jail. And, you know, the judge, you know, the attorney we had, he says, look, this is what they want you to do. You're either going to go to jail, or because it's the Vietnam War and all that, you can probably sign up and go to the military. And so the judge ended up giving me a chance to go to the military. So I went and signed up for the United States Marine Corps. And when I joined that, I went to boot camp at MCRD. And what was so cool is that I committed myself completely to what I was going to do. I became number one in my platoon. I got the high PT man. Out of 500 points, I got 483 points. And they gave me PFC right out of boot camp. And I became a squad leader when I went to train for Vietnam. And so what I did is I trained on weapons and different things, and booby traps and jungle warfare. And all of a sudden I'm thinking, you know what, I may die and come back in a bag. You know, the next morning we got in these cattle trucks and we went down to the Navy base, to the shipyards. And incredible, 5,000 troops going to Vietnam. And we're thinking, out of these 5,000 Marines, how many will return from Vietnam? Guys that I went through boot camp with, guys that I got to be real close to them, guys that were gonna be in my unit. And you start thinking a little bit different now, you know, wow, I wonder what's gonna happen. So I made up my mind on that ship. If I am going to go to war, I'm gonna be in Vietnam, I'm gonna do my best to be the best fighter, and if my enemy is gonna become my enemy. And so when we got to Da Nang, all of a sudden they put us on these trucks and they shipped me out to Chu Lai. That was my first stop. And it was December the 22nd, close to Christmas. So what happened is we get to Chu Lai, they take us in as the new guys, and all of a sudden the sergeant comes and says, you guys, by the way, we're actually building right now a new platoon, and we need some volunteers, and we need somebody to become a point man. And I remember, you know, going over to this side over here and being in this tent with these guys. And what happened is these guys became Alpha 17, the Bounty Hunters. That's what we named ourselves. I remember the first time I ever killed a person. One of the guys had a kind of like a bazooka type to fire. I said, no, wait a minute. So I took my rifle and I aimed for the first time and I fired, boom. And I shot, and then I went up, you know, about 100 yards went up. And the guy was on his face, and what happened is the bullet went through his back of the head, and it came out through his face. And that was the first time in combat that I had seen somebody die, my enemy. And there's something that happens to you when you pull the trigger and you kill and you take another human being's life. Something in you. It just is like an emptiness in your life. But then, every day, you get over it. And you start becoming like anybody else. And now it's survival of the fittest. You say you got to do your job. When you're in a firefight, you gotta fight. I became a point man, and because, you know, God had His hand on my life, I didn't know that, but He led me through, and when we were in combat, and whenever we did anything, I mean, I got shot once, and then I got hit by a booby trap. We were coming back from a patrol, and this 18-year-old kid from Texas, I'll never forget this. We're walking along, we come through the daytime, everything's clear in the village. We go back at night to set up an ambush. And as we're walking through the village, we're walking through this gate, so I'm telling them, now be careful, because usually they put booby traps and they put trips, wire trips. And then the booby trap will be set to the side. So I'm going through and I'm kind of teaching them, this is the way you do it, you know, and kind of teach them how to do that. Well, he's walking a little bit ahead, and all of a sudden he goes through, you hear this, whoosh, and I know it's a hand grenade. So I push him, and all of a sudden we hear this blast. And next thing you know is there's a firefight going on. I'm on the ground, and I'm picking up myself, and I'm shooting back. And all of a sudden, I'm feeling weak. I run over to this young guy that just came in from the United States. You know, he's a young guy, 18 years old, from Texas. I go over. His left arm is gone. Both of his legs are gone. You know, I grab him by the back of the head, and I pulled him in because of the firefight. And there's other guys that are wounded. And as I'm firing back at the enemy, all of a sudden I feel weak, and I begin to pass out. And what happened, I didn't know, but I was hit. I was hit by the booby trap. And even until today, I have, you know, shrapnel in my back and in my legs. And so what they did is they called a medevac in, and it took a couple hours because of the firefight. They put me in a helicopter, and they took me to Da Nang, to the hospital. So from there, they sent me to the U.S. sanctuary ship, the hospital ship in Vietnam. And when I got to the ship, this is what really hit me. Here I am, and the next couple of days, you know, I'm walking around the ward, and I go into this burn section, and I could not believe what I had seen. All these guys that were burned by napalm. The words cannot describe it. And others, they had no legs and no arms, and, you know, they came to me and they said, okay, Reese, you're going back. After 30 days, you're going back. I said, no problem. So I went back. My friend Pete Silva from Fresno, California, he was in my platoon, and we were walking through this place by a village, and he stepped in the booby trap, and it went off. And when we got to him, both of his legs were gone, and he was in deep pain. And so we called in the medevac, you know, and when the medevac came in, I picked up his legs and the boots still, you know, and put him in the chopper, and they took him away. And now it's July, and coming to September, all of a sudden we're out in major patrols. Things are getting really hot. I'm getting to be a short timer. And I tell the captain, you know what, man? I'm not gonna go out. That's it. I'm a short timer, man. And he says, you're gonna go out? I said, I'm not going out. I said, I'll kill you before I go out. It's not that I was afraid. It's just that when you're in war, and I had already for 9.5 months, almost 10 months, you know, carried my buddies. They were killed and wounded. And when you're constantly in battle, it gets to you. And it got to me. So what do? They send me to Da Nang, and they send me to the psychiatrist. And the psychiatrist sits me down and he says, Reese, what is your problem? I said, the problem is you. If you don't get me out of here, I'm going to kill you. And he took a piece of paper, started writing. And then he took it, he gave it to me, and then I went back to the captain. And the captain said, Reese, pack your stuff, you're leaving. I'm leaving? Like, where am I going? I thought I was going home. So what happens is I pack up all my stuff, say goodbye to my friends. I get on a Jeep, they take me down to Da Nang while I'm there. The MPs come up, and they put me in the C-131, and they ship me to the U.S. Naval Hospital in Oakland, California, Project 49A. Dr. Wilson is a psychologist, and what am I doing? I'm in the crazy house now. For 6 months, what happens? Here I am. And I have to go to these therapy meetings, you know, where you sit around and they talk to you about your past, and I hated it. Every time they would come to me, I end up cursing them out, getting violent, so they take me back to the ward. And eventually Dr. Wilson, after 6 months, said, you know what, Reese, we can't put up with it anymore. We're going to recommend that you get a dishonorable discharge. Well, I went back to Camp Pendleton, and Sharon and I have been writing letters in Vietnam. And as we're writing letters in Vietnam, guess what happens? We fall in love with each other.
He seemed fun and crazy, fun-loving. He would always say, when I come home, I'm going to marry you.
So I come home, and the first liberty that I have, to see her, we go out. She's from a missionary's home. Her parents have been missionaries in Colombia and Chile, and I mean, they're godly people.
He went to my church a few times, and he went up and he prayed when the pastor said to come up and pray. So I thought he was making a commitment to the Lord, because I'd say, well, did you pray? Did you give your life to God? Yeah, I did all of that.
And I talk to her, I love her, she gets pregnant, and now there's a child out of wedlock.
I had failed God and my parents and the way I was brought up, all my hopes, all my dreams, everything.
When she gets pregnant and she tells me she's pregnant, I say, you know what, I love you, and I'm going to marry you, you're going to have a child.
That's what I kept telling him. You don't understand. Because he didn't. I didn't even try to explain to him. You don't understand what it is to know God all your life and then sin. I knew the day after I sinned with Rod that I was going to reap consequences.
Her grandmother, her grandfather, her mom, her dad, her sister are all praying for me. And I don't even know this. So what happens? Through her pregnancy, okay, I go to the Marine Corps. They give me an honorable discharge. I get out. I get married, and what do I start doing? I start abusing her. Physically, verbally.
I didn't even know how to handle abuse. I didn't understand why it hurt so bad when he said things, horrible things to me. And I realize now that abuse is more than, it's just anything that you say to cut a person down is abuse. So I was being constantly abused. But the Word of God would lift me up always.
For the first 4.5 years of my marriage, it was a disaster. I had Raleigh, I had Shane, and they saw in my home the violence that was going on. And at the same time, here I am standing before my children, my wife, coming home, being with other women, and at the same time having no conviction. Until prayers are going up to heaven, I start getting this conviction. What I do is wrong. Wait a minute, where's that coming from? And all of a sudden, I try to do my thing, and I'm feeling guilty. And so what I do? Take it on my wife. And she never preached to me. She never did anything to me that I should retaliate against her, but it was my anger again. Coming against godliness, holiness, watching a woman that was sold out to God. But God used her and her family. Why? Because in 1972, April the 15th, I came home to kill my wife and my kids. Why? Because my wife have had it. Packed her bags. So she packed her bags. I come in, I see her bags packed there. I go my rifle, load up my rifle, my .22 rifle. I start destroying the house, wait for her to come home. I'm going to kill her. I'm going to get rid of her. And if I have to shoot my kids, nobody's going to take my kids. And then with the police, hey, we'll shoot it out. There's no problem with that. All of a sudden, I go over to the TV. I hit the TV with the butt of the rifle. TV comes on. I'm watching the TV, and this is this guy with the hippies, and he's kind of bald, and he has a big old grin in his face, and he's talking with Catherine Kuhlman about God and about Jesus and the Jesus people, and they're giving testimony. And all of a sudden, he sits on a stool, and he starts talking about God's love.
And then when they realize that all of the past is gone, that it's all been buried, that God has absolutely nothing against them, the slate is clean, it's a brand new life now with Jesus.
And I'm sitting there, listening to this, and I want to shoot this guy. I want to shoot this screen, get him off the screen. I can't pull the trigger. I can't pull the trigger. All of a sudden, what happens? His words become God's words, like an archer on that side with a bow and arrow, and those arrows are hitting my heart. And those arrows are going into my heart, and God is telling me, you need me. You need me. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. Hey, listen, I've always taken. I haven't given. God gave his Son for me, and that touched my heart. I said, Lord, I'm a sinner. And I got on my knees, and I asked Jesus Christ into my life. And I began to cry for the first time in my life, like a baby, asking God to please forgive me. Forgive me, God, for everything that I have done against you. And you know what? God heard my prayer. He touched me, and He saved me. All of a sudden, I get on my car, and I go searching for my wife. And I can't find her. So I go to the church where she goes. She's not there. So on my way back, I come home, and she's home. So I knock on the door. She doesn't want to open the door. She's crying inside. She opens the door with a latch. I say, honey, I've accepted the Lord. I'm born again. She shuts the door right in my face.
And I was scared. My heart was just pounding. I had told the kids to go in the bedroom. But he had like a real sweet sound to his voice that I'd never heard before. So I opened the door, and he comes in, and I was just looking at him like I'm looking at a crazy man. And he's just saying, I was watching TV, and this man talking about Jesus, and I'm born again, and he's just going rattling on. And I'm just trying to pacify him. Oh, okay, that's neat, that's good, okay. You know, just trying to pacify him, but I was afraid. I just sensed fear. I sensed that he would do anything so that I wouldn't leave him.
And it took a whole year for her to see the change in my life before she trusted me, because she knew how mean I was and the things that I've done.
He was reading his Bible every day. He's on his knees praying. And I would come in and just look at him and think, he's trying to impress me. That's what I thought. But then he started calling everybody and wanted to tell everybody about Jesus.
He comes knocking on the door and telling me he got born again, and man, I got to get born again. Now you got to remember, this is like day and night. This isn't even close to the Raul that I knew. I saw a spiritual side of him that I never saw before. He actually believed in something other than himself. And this something that he believed in was controlling his life. And I believe that to this day, it's the only thing that could ever control Raul Reese.
And if it wasn't because Jesus Christ touched my life, then I probably would have been dead now, or in prison, or who knows what happened to my life. I was learning martial arts before I went to Vietnam with Jimmy H. Wu. All I wanted to do was my martial arts. But there was something, as I began to read the Bible and study the Word of God, sitting at Calvary Chapel, that God began to put a call in my life to work with kids. It was just a love for them. And God taught me, and God molded me, and God is still doing that today. And He shapes you into what He wants you to be, so you can become a trophy for the kingdom of God. Because God loves us so much. You see, I was a trophy for the devil before. No more. God has a plan for your life. Don't waste it. I was a young Christian. I didn't want to preach. I didn't want to teach. God called me. God called me to do that. What happened is that I had my Kung Fu classes, and when I do a demonstration, huge demonstrations, I would, at the end of the demonstration, after doing the weapons and the forms and the fighting, I would end up, even with my instructor, Jimmy H. Wu there, and I got up and I preached the gospel of Jesus Christ. And he didn't like it. He did not like it. But you know what? About 7 years ago, I got a phone call. And he called me, he says, hey, Raleigh. He called me Ralphie. Ralphie, you want to come on and have lunch with me? Sure, Jimmy, I'll be down there. And we sit there and we have lunch together. And for the first time in all that time, he begins to open his heart to me. He was like a father to me. And you know what happened? I led him to the Lord right there. And 2 weeks later, he died. Blew me away. How God uses your life like trash. So I thank God for everything, because I'm still trash, and I know that you can't do nothing apart from Jesus Christ. And whoever thinks that they don't need God, they're crazy, because I don't care how good or how bad you are or who you are. Jesus loves you, and He wants to use your life. And we only have one life to live. That's for Jesus Christ. He's the only one. To see that we started with 7 people in our home as a Bible study, and now we have 15,000 people coming here after 10 years almost now. I can't believe how fast it's flown. What we do now here at Calvary Chapel, we started, a couple of years ago, the Somebody Loves You Crusades. And the reason for that is to reach the world for Christ. We do musical events, and then we have a message, and so we try to do it in different cities, like Billy Graham does. And we also have our Somebody Loves You radio ministry. We're right now over 400 stations across America, and we're trying to get into Central America, South America, and then the church here, it keeps me pretty busy. Plus, I have my Kung Fu class here, and we do demonstrations to reach non-believers, you see, for the gospel of Jesus Christ. Well, what I do too is I'm a chaplain for the Sheriff's Department, and what I do is I give of my time freely at night to go out with the officers to situations, and I'm there to minister to them, never to convert them or to preach them, but just to be an assistant to them. Whatever they need, I'm there. So I've been building a bridge and a friendship with them, and so God is really blessing it, and I'm really happy to be a chaplain for the sheriffs. What makes me happy now is that I know that I'm forgiven and that God's forgotten all my sins, but at the same time, I'm so happy because God's using my life and I'm watching people's lives change. That's what's so cool, that people's lives are being changed, that I'm not wasting my life. I feel like I waste my time sometimes because that's the enemy. But you know what? When I see people and they write to me or I talk to people, and you begin to see what kind of effect you have done on the radio when people have never seen you, they don't even know what you look like, and they say, you changed my life. Well, it wasn't really me. God used me as an instrument to change your life. You know, and you can do the same for others. And that's what I recommend.
Raul Reese is known to thousands as pastor, mentor, friend. But no one could have predicted this future had they looked at his childhood. Isn't it amazing what can happen to somebody's future when they become adopted into the family of God? Our prayer for you is that you would seek God. In seeking God, that you would find Him. And in finding Him, you will find your God-given destiny for your life. Thank you so much for watching this program. If you enjoyed it, please email us. We love to hear from you. And we'd like to hear what else you'd like to see on future episodes. God bless you, and we'll see you next week.
Tonight's program has been sponsored by the Trinity Broadcasting Network. And only with your love gift of support can it stay on the air. So please write to TBN, P.O. Box A, Santa Ana, California, 92711. Or email us at damascusroads@tbn.org.